we'd like to introduce, we are very, very excited to introduce the first podcaster event of the day. And it's a podcast launch by Julian Yeates, a podcaster from South Africa, Johannesburg, South Africa. And she is here to launch her podcast that is focused on mindfulness. Julian, take it away.
Hello and welcome to my podcast launch. I am Julian Yeates and this is Mindful, a mental health podcast where we listen to your mind. Thank you so much for joining me. I am so humbled to have this platform to talk to you about my very new podcast, and I think it's so amazing that all of us have the opportunity to create podcasts, and I think it's also very important for all of us to have the conversation around mental health. I hope that you find this presentation enlightening as well as just lots of fun. Make sure to keep that chat box going with all of your thoughts and comments along the way. So today I will be giving an introduction into my podcast as well as the aims and behind the scenes of it and future predictions. I'll be sharing some tips and tricks as well on how to start your own podcast if that's what you have in mind. But stay tuned for the very end because we will be having a live Q&A where we can discuss all of these things in a more holistic conversation. So stay tuned for that. But first off, who am I and why am I talking to you today? Well, like I said before, I am Julian Yeates. I recently graduated from Rhodes University in the Eastern Cape, South Africa, with a distinction in journalism and media studies. I'm currently doing my second honours, which is English literature at the University of Cape Town. I am so passionate about language and storytelling, and I think it's such a great power we all have to share not only our own stories, but to be able to pass down the stories of others. I think it's very important to unearth the taboo in the search of truth. I don't think anything should be left unsaid or undug because it is so important that we talk about these things to destigmatize them, especially mental health. I am an avid podcast listener. I love listening to all types of podcasts because I think it's such an amazing way to learn things as well as to hear different voices from around the world. And so I thought, hey, why isn't it my turn to create a podcast? So I did just that. I am also a huge mental health awareness advocate because I believe everyone should be able to have a stable and happy mindset. And I think the way we can achieve that is through openly talking about our mental health struggles as well as openly asking for help. And that's one of the aims I hope to achieve in my podcast of Mindful. So finding the aim of Mindful, what is it and why Mindful? Why a mental health podcast and why a podcast in general? So the idea of mindful came from my understanding that we weren't being very aware of how we were feeling mentally, especially since the COVID pandemic. We became very reclusive, locked up and locked down and focusing a lot on our physical health, which is very important, but it landed up having our mental health being sent to the wayside. So I think it's very important that we become more mindful of how we are feeling mentally, spiritually and physically so that we can live a more holistically happy life. And I aim to kind of highlight this problem through my podcast of Mindful. I was also very tired of the portrayal of mental health in media, which was a very boring and clinical surface level understanding of mental health without diving into the experiential nature of mental health and what it actually means to live with one. And I thought I could do that in a very creative and engaging way through the podcast as well. The aim of Mindful is to create a conversation around mental health and to become more introspective and reflective of ourselves as well as others, creating kind of an attitude of empathy so that we can be more helpful towards our friends and families. I wanted to combine both a professional and a personal aspect in the podcast so that it could have a more well-rounded form to it and it wouldn't be biased in either direction. I thought that the mental health podcasts were lacking in the sense of having an engaging storytelling aspect of mental health, and it was more what to do to seek help. And I thought that that can sometimes seem a bit preachy instead of trying to understand what people with mental health issues actually go through. And that's what I wanted to tap into, was the human nature of mental health. Podcasting, as we know, is a booming industry, and anyone and everyone can have a podcast. So I thought I'd get my ticket on that train and create my own podcast. And I thought it fit in so nicely with today's theme of podcasting as freedom, because we deserve to have the power and freedom to express ourselves fully. And some of that expression can be difficult when it comes to being honest about how we are feeling about our mental health and our mental states. So being able to not feel like mental health is a taboo topic and speak about it freely, and be able to give people the opportunity to come up to the mic and speak up, is very important. And that freedom, I believe, everyone should be able to have. And I hope that this Mindful podcast definitely spreads that ability and that awareness. So just to point out how the mental health struggle is real and that it is necessary to create more content on this, here are some statistics. So over 400,000 people called into the South African Depression and Anxiety Group between January and September of last year, and there was a 40% increase in helpline calls with reports of helplessness and being trapped. So that is a very sad indication of the population's mental health, but these are only the people that chose to speak up. So I'm sure there were many more that didn't know how to seek help or were feeling unable to do so. When we look at it in an African and a global context, the new pandemic is the mental health crisis. 33% of South Africans are depressed, 20% increase in mental illness in India, and most African governments devote less than 1% of their budgets to mental health services. And this just proves that our governments, unfortunately, do not see mental health problems as big enough to spend more money on, which again just leads to mental health being not seen as a big deal, people feeling like they don't have access to facilities and not wanting to seek help and talk about their problems. So it seems not only just a civilian issue, but a governmental issue that should also be addressed. So the making of Mindful. What is this podcast and how did I do it? So the setup of Mindful is quite a different one from a normal podcast. I, as the anchor, sit down with some guests. One will always be a professional, a counselor, psychiatrist, someone who has had experience in the industry of dealing with people with mental illness. The other guest would be someone who's experienced that specific mental illness firsthand. Each episode we deal with a different mental illness, so we've dealt with anxiety, depression, ADHD, bipolar, and so on. In each episode we also listen to an audio drama. In this audio drama we listen to a monologue of a dramatized narrative of someone living with that specific mental illness. And this audio drama is about 7 to 11 minutes long and is quite an engaging, creative story which plays with a lot of sounds and musics to really immerse the listener into it. The guests and I then unpack the audio drama, reflect on it, reflect on ourselves as well as the community at large, and then put forth some ideas of how to move forward. So it's a very engaging and well-rounded podcast because it has all of these different elements: conversation, storytelling, fiction, and fact. And I think that creates a really nice, nuanced, and balanced podcast. So I created this podcast over a 6-week intensive process for my Rhodes journalism course final project. I was able to create 5 episodes, each focusing on a new mental illness. And I edited all of these episodes as well. So I was in pre-production and post-production. I edited them using Adobe Audition software. I created a social media page as well as a website which I populated with this information, and I created some cover art which is nice and fun and creates a more personal feel and look to the podcast. So I was there throughout the whole process of the creative and technical parts of this podcast. Here are some fun behind the scenes clips of us in the studio recording with my fabulous guests. Some of the guests I have are listed below: Nicola, a counselling psychologist from DSG, Lynn, an educational and occupational therapist from Deloitte, and Hunter, a master's student specialising in ADHD, using her own experiences as the foundation. I was also able to use some Rhodes University students to help me with the audio dramas, and they all did a fantastic job. Here are some more behind the scenes with some beautiful faces. Zama, a volunteer for SADC, Samantha, an aerobics instructor and body positive Instagram influencer, and Markin, who voiced the audio drama about bipolar, which was based on his own experiences. So as you can see from these photos, I have included different people from different backgrounds who can bring their unique insights and perspectives onto the mental health conversation, which again adds a nice flavor to the podcast and ensures that there is diversity in voice and perspective. Now onto the audio dramas, which was a big part of the podcast. And what I had to do here is research intensively on each specific mental illness each week. I then scripted it by making it a narrative from the first person perspective, as though we were in the mind of someone with that specific mental illness. Then I recorded it and directed it with an actor, and then edited it using Adobe Audition and finding some fun sound effects and ambient music to really evoke emotion in the listener. And then we listened to it during the interviews. So I had to make sure I had all of these audio dramas ready before each of my actual live studio interviews. So that could also get a bit tricky and time consuming, but I really enjoyed this part because I enjoy storytelling and creative writing, and I really liked being able to bring characters to life. And I got a lot of positive feedback during the interviews where people connected with what was said in the audio drama. So now we are going to listen to some snippets of my podcasts, which I've compiled into audiograms, and I hope these teasers will tantalize you enough to go and listen to my full podcast episodes. So first we're going to be listening to episode 3, which is on depression, and we are listening to a snippet from the audio drama within that. So just listener discretion is advised because we will be listening to sensitive content.
Oh no, it's my mom. She can't hear me crying, she'll worry. I dry my face and I answer. Oh, hi Mom. Yes, I'm fine, thanks. I lie. I hope she doesn't hear the tremble in my voice. Today I'm just going to do some work and see friends for lunch. Another lie, but it comforts me. Thanks for calling. Don't hang up. I want to talk for longer. I want to scream out and cry and tell you how much pain I'm in. I hope you have a good day too. No. Why can't I tell her I'm struggling? Why can't I tell her the truth? Why can't I ask for help? Bye, Mom. Love you too. It's too late. It always is. I haven't told anyone how I'm actually feeling.
Great, thanks for listening to that first audiogram. Please keep those comments coming in and your thoughts and feelings on that. We are now listening to generalized anxiety disorder, which is again just a snippet of the audio drama from that episode in episode 1.
I can feel the eyes burning on my back and the words being whispered all about me. And it's all too much. The tightness in my body has returned. It's bundled in my chest. The pain is an elastic band snapping against my heart. A ceaseless churning begins in my stomach. I can't breathe, and my vision has gone blurry. And I wish I never left home. I have to get out of here, but my feet are already ahead of me, and I've just burst through the shop doors. My hands are trembling like flickering light bulbs, and my breath is scattered noise. Pinch my eyes closed and try to focus my breath. Breathe. Breathe. Breathe.
Thank you again for listening to that snippet. So as you can see, I was trying to capture the essence of a person living with a specific mental illness and disorder through tapping into their subconscious and elucidating that internal monologue. Now for the final snippet, it is on ADHD, and this is a conversation I was having with Hunter Nierstedt after we had just listened to parts of the audio drama for this episode, and we are now talking about her experiences with ADHD. And we're back in the studio after listening to the first snippet of the audio drama. So Hunter, tell me, could you relate to the initial feelings of the character?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that you hadn't hidden mics in my little study space. Absolutely can relate.
Can you relate to the dreaded Aristotle essay?
I can. First year really almost ruined me.
Bad flashbacks.
Yeah, definitely.
And would you say that you also do the same thing where you distract yourself with other tasks?
Yes. Exactly what I do. Sometimes not even tasks, but just procrastination, but trying to make it sound productive. It's a whole mess.
The disguise.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to these audiograms. I hope they tickled your fancy and encourage you to go listen to the full episodes of Mindful. So here are some interesting facts about Mindful. I'm currently on 199 listens, and it is available on Iona FM, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. So I really hope you can get me to 200 listens. So that would be amazing. So go and listen to wherever you get your podcasts. So what are my future predictions and hopes for Mindful? So what does Mindful need to succeed? What about season 2? And what about the conversation around mental health? Well, I was thinking about if I could possibly do a second season of Mindful, and I would really love to go into the ideas of mental disorders that we encounter during our experiences in life, not something that we're necessarily born with or predisposed to because of genetics, for example. So I was thinking of exploring ideas of grief and trauma in my second season, which a lot of us and as a collective have gone through because of the COVID pandemic. And I thought it would be interesting to unpack not only the individual understanding and side of grief and trauma, but as a collective too. And I thought playing with that narratively and creatively would be a lot of fun, as well as be very elucidating to the audiences. So that's my hope for season 2, but would I be able to actually feasibly do it? Since I'm currently studying, and my course isn't aimed towards creating a podcast, it would be very difficult for me to find the time to commit to making a full second season. So I do think I would need a bit of help in that regard, maybe hiring some people or having people help me out. And again, that would require some equipment and funding since I don't have access to studios and Adobe Audition anymore. So funding would be needed in that regard as well. I would want to increase my listenership as well as the growth and the possibilities and opportunities of this podcast, not only through heightening my website appeal, but also my social media presence. So those are my hopes to achieve for future Mindful episodes. But again, I think I would need a bit of help because doing all of this alone, although very fun and enlightening, was quite draining. So I'd really appreciate some help with that. I also want the mental health conversation to go further and wider, but also to reach home. And that's the most important part of the mental health conversation, is for us to feel comfortable enough to take it home in our own languages and break the stigma and silence around mental illness. So I hope I can continue to do that. So here are some tips for starting a podcast, and I'm sure you would have picked up on some of them through listening to what I actually had to do to make this podcast. So first of all, you have to find your concept. What is your core idea of this podcast? What do you hope to achieve? Has it been done before, or is this a completely new idea? If it has been done before, can you actually make it in a creative, fun way and not just in the same way that it's been told before? Who is your target audience and what is your target message? And do both of these align? Because that's very important. You need to figure out what is the demographic of your target audience, age range, things like that, and will they actually listen and enjoy the message you are trying to tell? Also, think about the technology you will need to actually produce the podcast. What equipment do you need? Do you need a microphone? You can get some editing tools, nothing fancy. The basics are good to start with, and playing around with it and figuring out what works for you is also lots of fun. Would you require funding, or would you need some help of part-time or full-time workers? On what type of scale would you want to produce this podcast? And then at the end of the day, just go for it. If you have this amazing idea and you are really set on achieving it, you can do it. I was able to do it, and even though I had self-doubt along the way, I persisted because podcasting is my passion, and I'm sure it is as well for a lot of you. And sometimes you have to take that big leap of faith. So we have reached the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for sticking around and listening to me. Before I hand over for some questions, I would like to say a big thank you to all of these people who have helped me on my podcast journey. Thank you, of course, to my amazing lecturers and mentors at Rhodes University. Thank you to the Africa Podfest for hosting me and allowing me to have this platform to talk to all of you, and for being such an amazing institution as a whole, and for supporting young African creators. To my wonderful guests and voice actors who lent their voice to my podcast, it would not have been possible without you. Thank you. And of course to you, dear listener, thank you so much for your support and encouragement in Mindful. I really do appreciate it, and I can't wait to continue in the future. Please follow me on all of my socials, or feel free to reach out an email if you want to collab or are interested in talking about it more. But now it's your time to talk. I've been talking this whole time, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Feel free to ask me any questions regarding the podcast, regarding mental health. I'm all ears, and I can't wait to talk to you live. Thank you once again for tuning into my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.